in my personal development, I'd say the one thing that has helped me the most is becoming intimately familiar with some tooling. For me, it's Foundry, and this has helped me. Like, I can just spin up immediately within 10 seconds. A new Foundry project. I see something. Oh, I can reproduce that immediately. There's a new hack. Oh, how does this work? Oh, I can immediately reproduce it. It kind of reduces that friction of, I need to, how do I initialize this new project? How do I write my code? It's definitely helped me just do the things that if I wasn't intimately familiar, I would have pushed it aside. It's not worth the 30 minutes.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Devs Do Something. Today's guest is Rage, an anon dev who has done a lot of really great work in the space, both with low-level Solidity stuff and in DeFi. In this episode, we talk through Rage's learning journey, his time in the space so far. He's another young gun who has come very far in a very short period of time, and it was fun to talk about how he's gotten where he is now. But we also went into the Optimizoor culture a bit, like the impacts of this open environment that all of us are playing in on the speed at which people can learn, the new knowledge that's being created within Web3, and more really interesting just general engineering topics. So Rage is someone who was recommended to me by Dev Tooligan. Dev Tooligan has been a wealth of guest recommendations for the show. And yeah, we hope you enjoyed this episode. If you are someone who is an Optimizoor yourself, who likes digging into low-level systems, understanding the EVM under the hood, and just wants to continue contributing knowledge to the space, Rage is a great person to listen to and to learn from. So with that, sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy the episode. As devs, we all love hackathons. They're a great way to boost your skill set, meet other engineers, and add to your portfolio of work. At Superfluid, we've sponsored many hackathons and decided to start putting on a hackathon of our own, the Superfluid Wave Pool. This hackathon is a little bit different though in that it's continuous. It's always open. You can submit any project built on Superfluid at any point throughout the month and have a chance to earn thousands of dollars in prizes depending on how your project stacks up. In just the last couple of months, we've seen dozens of teams build really amazing projects that run the gamut from Superfluid developer tutorials to full-fledged applications to a proof of concept Superfluid StarkNet implementation that we thought was really, really impressive. So we encourage you to check it out today. You can learn more by going to superfluid.finance/wavepool. That's superfluid.finance/wavepool. Happy hacking. All right, we are back with another episode of Devs Do Something with a guest that I'm super excited to have here. That was a recommendation from Dev Tooligan, who's that was one of the most popular episodes of all time. So I think this is going to be probably a good episode too. We have with us today Rage. Welcome.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you, Sam.
Yes, it's great to have you. So we're excited to dive into some things that you've done in your career and get into a lot of things that I think would be really helpful for early to mid-career devs in the space. But before we do that, how did you get into crypto and like Web3 overall?
Yeah, it's a great start. I feel like most people that you talk to in crypto have some kind of crazy story how they first got in. I don't necessarily have a crazy one, but I'd say the first time I heard about crypto was 2017. Some of my family members were really into the ICO thing. They were famously kind of reading like one white paper a day. That was their thing. I hopped on that train too. Obviously, I wasn't heavily invested. I was a youngster then, but that was my first foray into that, and I kind of got my first development chops then too. Um, there were some, like meme coins that would have CPU mining, and I would launch some Google Cloud instances on the free credits. You just make an email, launch Google Cloud instances, and basically mine these meme coins for free. And that was one of my first things I've ever done, like engineering wise. That was really really a good time. But after the sort of like 2018, early 2018 crash, I basically forgot about all that. Um, and we fast forward to about late 2021. I got recommended a like yield farming video, and like this guy was making like $5,000 a day on this. Yeah, this is crazy. Um, and I got into the Avalanche ecosystem, and at this point, I'm very fledgling developer. Like all I could do to get myself known, I was making these Discord bots for NFT projects. Basically, all it would do is, read an event from the chain, from the transfer events, and it would post on sales, and I'd take care of some of their like rarity. Um, so that was the first thing that kind of got me known in the space. How I made a Twitter account, kind of got some following. So that's really how I got started in crypto. How I even started in development engineering.
Interesting. So you started off doing the original hustle during the ICO days. That's kind of funny with the Google Cloud.
I probably only had like $40 to my crypto net worth then, but it was still quite fun.
So you were just spinning up different Google Cloud instances on free credits with different emails. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, that was absolutely it. This one that I really did was called Garlic Coin.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it launched I think on Reddit, and it actually, I looked at like the project. It had like a resurgence. I think like a year and a half ago, which is quite interesting.
That's hilarious. Some of those things. There's a team member on Superfluid, which is where I work, who jokes about the one that he thought was the most absurd was like called DentaCoin. It was like a dentist thing.
Oh my gosh, I've never heard of that.
There's all kinds of stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's interesting. So you forgot about it. You eventually came back, started writing some Discord bots. And if that was 2021, you went 0 to 100 with Discord bots to what you're doing now relatively quickly.
Yeah, so just to add a little bit more context, I dropped out of school about around the same time to kind of go full time into this. I initially started university for electrical engineering, but I kind of found computer science as a side thing, and I quickly realized like I kind of have a good aptitude for this. So I switched my majors, and then a year later ended up dropping out to go full time crypto development. So it was definitely interesting.
Nice. And then beyond the Discord bot writing freelance style gig, what did you do after that? Like, how did you get really into the Solidity stuff?
Yeah. So my first intro into Solidity, one of the first things I did was on Avalanche. There was this sort of MEV that I could extract on this protocol. It was a fork of Aave, and I knew basically nothing at the time. My code was terrible, but it was just a bit of a back running. Like someone would deposit, and you could grab like a couple bucks an hour out of that. So that's how I first got started in Solidity writing. Uh, and I was hooked. It was pretty addicting. Um, and I wrote a lot of bad code, probably locked a bunch of money in my code in there. Testing was non-existent, um, but it really got me hooked.
So when you say it got you hooked, this is an interesting one because it does seem to hook a lot of people. And I think people come at it with they come at it for different reasons. They get hooked for different reasons. Some people get really into the low level, just optimizer game. They just love like something about the elegance or the competition of like writing the most efficient code. It just really like, I don't know, something about that just really excites them. We've had people on that they really get excited about that. Uh, but for you, it sounds like there was like a thing here where there was some kind of like economic feedback loop.
The economic impact was kind of a secondary thing. That was cool, but I just really enjoyed the it's kind of like the difficulty, kind of like the like hacker mindset. Like I don't do it because necessarily there's money in it, but because it's a difficult engineering problem, and that's what I really enjoyed.
Interesting.
And that's what got me initially into like the optimizing, the CTFs, all this that eventually I spent a lot more time on.
For sure. Like, what's your take on this whole optimizer culture, right? So we had on 0x Beans a couple of months ago, right? The guy who created the I Am the Optimizer challenge. And we talked about this for a while, like the role of this, the role of this like tinkering and
Yeah.
just trying to build efficient code really just for the sake of it, almost like for the art. So, I mean, how do you see this? It sounds like it's something that really kind of propelled your learning in your career, but I'm interested to hear what your take is on this whole culture in Web3.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a good, kind of story with this. Actually, the I Am the Optimizer challenge was one of the. It's definitely memorable for me. So I teamed up with um, Sam Sun and Riley um, Holter Huss, I believe is that last name, and we spent dozens of hours kind of optimizing this. It's a meme challenge basically for crypto Twitter devs, but we were enamored with it seriously. Um, and I met up with 0x Beans a little bit after that, and we talked with great length about the future of like the optimizer culture. Yeah, like how it's captured so many people's minds. Uh, as you can, I mean, it's everywhere on crypto Twitter, developer Twitter. Um, yeah, I just think it's there's some great opportunities in capturing the mind space of developers. Really,
I agree with you 100%. And I think it's interesting for a lot of reasons, but what specifically enamored you with it? Like why were you so enamored with this challenge? Like what really hooked you about it? Was it just that it was purely fun? Was there anything specific about it?
yeah. More about what I've talked about earlier is that it's kind of the difficulty. Like this is a challenge that has no, maybe it has a quick solution, but on the way, it's going to be a difficult problem until someone eventually finds like the absolute best solution. And I guess you could say that's how the optimizer culture is. There, there might be one correct solution, but along the way, you're going to spend hours and hours thinking about this one problem. And that's what's captured me personally. I can't speak, for other developers, but this is what I enjoy about development is putting my full attention into something, uh, and optimizing really like itches that for me.
Yeah, I love that. I think CTFs fill a similar role in this space. I would say CTFs are more so like I feel like occasionally those try to channel developer mindshare toward like certain kinds of problems, right? Or like certain brands in the space will sponsor them and it helps them build mindshare. Like Paradigm puts them on because it's good for Paradigm as a fund, right?
Yeah.
Um, but how about CTFs? Like, I mean, I'm assuming you participated in quite a few of them. Uh, do you have any good CTF stories or memories or favorite challenges that you took on?
Yeah, I'm still quite early. Like the first real live CTF event I did was the Paradigm CTF last year, and I did. I worked with my coworker Cheb, and we did so much better than we expected. It was 48-hour challenge. We probably got 4 hours of sleep total. Uh, but it's just something so addicting about it, that it's really similar to the optimizing, where you know the dopamine of solving a challenge is just like the dopamine of finishing this optimization. Your code is elegant, your solution's elegant. Maybe it cost you 40 lines of comments, but it's beautiful in the end. And if there's so the one CTF challenge I looked at uh, not too long ago was the swap challenge from the 2021 Paradigm CTF. And so this challenge went unsolved during the 48 hours. But and the reason for that is actually the underlying solution was you had to exploit a issue in the Solidity compiler from, I believe it was around 424, maybe about 0.5 it got fixed. Um, Basically the issue was you could overflow the free memory pointer, and you could corrupt some memory. And after looking into this challenge, I kind of got thinking about some more of the systemic risks. Like people import libraries all the time. Like, do you really know exactly what's going on? One thing that hit me specifically in this was in the Soulmate safe transfer library. It explicitly doesn't have a check for if the contract you're transferring from exists. And this is basically showing up in all the audit reports. But if you don't know that, then there could be an issue. And something people say is if you can't reproduce the libraries you're importing from memory, then you probably shouldn't be importing them. And I totally agree with that. Like if you can't rewrite the ERC20.sol just on a whim, do you really know what's going on? Can similarly with maybe the ECDSA, we've seen in the Open Zeppelin library there was signature malleability. All these things. Like, do you understand what's going on under the hood? Yes, that's what I have to say there.
Well, don't tell that to anyone that's like a React developer or something, because that's like that whole.
Oh yeah, this is so I really enjoy having full understanding of the things underneath me. I I don't. I'm not particularly good React dev. Please don't have me write any CSS.
I was getting that vibe. That's not surprising to me.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's really interesting, and I think that's a pretty interesting way to look at, like, I guess, sort of these supply. I don't want to say they're supply chain attacks. That's not really the right term. It's just understanding everything that you're actually importing in your Solidity code is really important, right? It's great that we can build smart contracts that build on top of each other, right? And, like, you can inherit stuff, you can use standards that people have already written for you. That's all great. So you don't have to do all the work. But if you don't understand them and you're going to write some application that's going to have billions of dollars worth of funds sitting in these applications, you should probably understand what you're importing.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
that's probably a good way to look at it. So I mean, so now we're getting a little bit into, like, actually building protocols and writing smart contracts more generally. I mean, how is, like, being involved with this Optimizoor crowd and playing around in CTFs? Like, how has this helped you with, like, your main day-to-day work? Have there been
Yeah.
any things that you've, like, really taken back with you and been like, dude, I know I've just been tinkering out here on the fringes, doing
Oh,
stuff that
yeah,
might not be
absolutely.
directly productive, but I'm sure it's helped you in some ways.
Yeah, of course. I'd say, you know, specifically CTFs, they put you in this sort of mindset that you assume all code is vulnerable. Like, if you're going into a CTF, you know this code has some issue. Um, but traditionally, you might not look at your own code as, there's something wrong here, but it kind of helps to search for an issue, even if there might not be one. And definitely has helped me find some issues before they go into live code, even pushed onto the GitHub. Um, just putting yourself in an adversarial mindset. Like, I'm an attacker. I need to find an issue in this code at all costs. That's kind of the CTF mindset. Um, I'll spend whatever time is necessary to find the issue. Um, and even if your code is completely fine, it's a great mindset to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. But, like, how do you balance that with also, like, actually producing the code in the first place, right? So if you talk to, like, writers, like people that just write for a living, a lot of them talk about how they have, like a like a writer, like, generative mindset, where they're not judging everything they're putting down on paper or that they're typing. They're just creating, and then a lot of times they'll flip over into an editor mode where they're extremely harsh to the things they just wrote. Right? They rip it
Yeah,
up, they tear it to shreds. How do you, like, as someone who really knows all of the dangers that could present themselves in the code that you even wrote after participating in CTFs and trying to find vulnerabilities other places. Like, do you have a similar process where you divide up your time between, like, all right, I'm writing this program and then I'm looking at it with, like, an auditor style hat on or like a hacker hat on? Do you just, like, literally start off with just trying to design a system with all this stuff in mind in the first place? Like, how do you particularly uh, approach this?
yeah. Me personally, I'm absolutely the same way as the writers. Um, when I write my code, I kind of am in a, like, defensive point of view. Like, I want to have all the safety checks. I want to be overly verbose, maybe at the cost of optimization. Um, and that's the first pass. You have to get code that works first. And usually my second pass will be like a early optimization pass. Like, can I get rid of some of these required checks? Can I get rid of some state? Um, just to not only for gas optimization, but it lowers the sort of attack surface. If your function is 10 lines versus 50, there's less to think about, and less that can be wrong. And The kind of third mindset would be the adversarial, like hacker attacker mindset, where I I not only want to find a bug, but I want to fix it before it ever is an issue. And I find that having all these hats you can put on is helpful to you can see your code in all the different lights.
Yep, I think that's a great way to look at it. You mentioned something there that I think is interesting. That's maybe worth highlighting. Is that you mentioned when you're first writing this system, right? Like you're a little more verbose than maybe you need to be because you want to make sure that everything is like well understood and that you understand what's going on, so that everything is like you're not focusing on optimization quite yet, right? One failure mode I think some optimizers have is they place optimization on such a pedestal that they produce something that's not very well not very well, that's maybe the wrong way to put it, but it's not very easy to understand from other people who need to look at your code, whether it's an auditor or even just like a teammate or somebody else that might uh, be around to look at your code or maybe like take on a bug bounty or something like that. And sometimes because of all the complexity that might be introduced for the sake of optimization, it introduces new problems, right? So how do
Yep.
you personally balance like writing very secure and understandable code with optimization? Like how do you look at it?
Yeah, I think the one of the best examples for this is arguably one of the best recent code bases, the Seaport code base. Uh, they have a reference full solidity implementation, and they wrote that first. That's the reference, and then you built the full optimized, balls to the walls, all in assembly. How can we extract as much gas from this? And um, from a attack surface point of view, I think that's really helpful because you have a great starting place from your optimization rather than dropping immediately into assembly and doing all this complex work. You you can get a better feel for what you actually want to do if you just write it in your higher level language first.
Yep. And one other thing that I've heard people say too is just to like if you really want to if you're nervous about it or if you don't feel like you're as good with writing optimizations that are secure, you can also just focus on the hot paths, like the couple of hottest paths that are going to be most likely to have the greatest gas impact on your users. You can just focus there. So that's maybe another
Absolutely.
tidbit. Um,
Yeah, I feel like there's recently in the optimizer culture, maybe some people have taken it too far. Like the average contract is going to be absolutely fine. You just optimize, your storage, and that's usually all you need. But in search for the extra 1% of gas optimization, your potential attack surface might, double when your solidity code for that path might have been 5 lines. Suddenly in assembly, it's 40. It's you really have to think about all these things.
yeah, that's good advice, I think. How do you think about attacks that aren't just about like solidity code and solidity bugs, right? So like there are all kinds of problems that can happen that can destroy a protocol that aren't even like a direct solidity vulnerability.
Yeah.
It could be a DevOps mistake, right? Which we've seen, like lots of money lost due to like DevOps problems,
Yeah.
basically. It could be a crypto economic problem. It could be something happening on the front end that causes a loss of funds. Do you think about attacks that are beyond just the standard like solidity bug ever? And if so, like, is there anything in particular that you think is worth calling out for maybe early career devs to think about, or anything in particular that's maybe underrated in terms of a security risk?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you there. So, one of the most recent ones we saw was it's maybe a little bit out of scope, but the flash bots, sandwich attack, like these sandwich bots, their Solidity code was rock solid, but their bundles got leaked and they got wrecked. There was, their code was absolutely fine, but from a operational standpoint, the code that was, beneath them wasn't rock solid. One specific example that ties into Solidity is precompiles, like delegate calling to a precompile. We've seen on some alt L1 chains, L2 chains, they have their own custom precompile code. And sometimes they just don't think about, hey, I can delegate call to this ERC20 precompile. How does this work? We've seen hacks like this.
Interesting. Yeah, that's worth calling out. That's worth calling out for sure. Can you tell me more about the Flashbots example? I didn't actually follow that one. So what exactly went wrong for them?
I'm not fully well versed on this, but briefly, the sandwich bots, they bundle up the exploited transaction. Let's say I'm swapping on Uniswap. They put a transaction of their own before and after, and they capture a little bit of money out of that because of slippage. Now, the security risk with this is that you've signed a transaction that is buying a whole bunch of this token. And theoretically, if your bundle was, it's called unbundled, meaning normally for a sandwich, you want all three of the transactions to land, right after each other, perfectly how you wanted it to. But let's say someone was in the middle, they could pluck out your front run transaction, which was buying a whole bunch of this token, and put it on its own. And suddenly you've exposed yourself to a whole bunch of, dollar loss potentially. And this is kind of what happened here.
Interesting. Yeah, the MEV world is so wild to me. It's still like one of the most wild.
It's a crazy, adversarial space. Everyone kind of is attacking each other all at the same time.
Yeah, you got to know what you're getting into if you're going to go play around with MEV.
Absolutely.
Yeah, do your research out there, folks. But one other thing I wanted to talk to you about, I don't know if you brought this up or Dev Tooligan brought this up or I saw this on Twitter, but I hear that you're into advanced math. Is that correct, or am I missing?
So, I wouldn't necessarily say advanced math, but I've been definitely looking into cryptography quite a bit lately, and the project I'm working on, Size.Market, is it's a sealed bid auction essentially, and one of the main hurdles we had to get through was, how do you deal with on-chain encryption? And this is what got me down this cryptography path. And it turns out, it's not that difficult. You just have to design very specifically around it. One of the coolest things I found while researching how we could solve this, sealed on-chain auction is time lock encryption. So the way theoretically this works is you have some sort of proof of work system similar. It's not dissimilar to like a Bitcoin, the Bitcoin algorithm, where people are basically searching for this one specific number that will decrypt the encryption. And you can intend it to, say, last 30 minutes um, based on, roughly how many CPUs are looking after this number. Now, there's a whole bunch of issues with this if you want to put this in production. Number one, there's kind of an ecological impact where you're wasting a whole bunch of CPU cycles just looking for this time locked number, which I would kind of morally be a little bit more opposed to. But it's sort of this holy grail of encrypting to the future without having to personally reveal your key.
Interesting. So one thing I think is really cool about some of this stuff, right, is that this kind of goes back to the optimizer culture thing, but it's like the problems you're trying to solve lead to like the discovery of more knowledge, right? Whether it's you discovering that this thing you just found out about, like time locked encryption, can be used specifically for your use case, or if it's something like, oh, we just discovered this new way to like manipulate the EVM into shaving off, a tiny little bit of gas to win this competition, right? Or to win the I am the Optimizer challenge for a little bit. And I think what this does, the reason why this is so cool, is that you guys are just following what's interesting. I mean, for this, in this one, in the case of the time locked encryption, that's necessary for your work. But I think in general, though, this high level trend, this way of operating in the world where you're just searching for interesting stuff, I think it's just like a really good, almost like personal search algorithm to find and actually create new knowledge in the first place. It's like how like I feel like this is how I imagine the OG scientists like and science community operating back in like the 1920s or something like that, with just a bunch of rogue Wild West style individuals.
Yeah, working on problems nobody's
Yes.
even thought about.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I love that. And just to clarify a little bit, Size doesn't use time lock encryption. This is sort of what I've been, kind of theorizing about. It would be pretty cool to have, but it's a difficult problem to solve in production.
For sure. So what other things related to cryptography are you interested in besides this? Or is this like the main thing you've kind of, this is the main rabbit hole you've gone down?
So this is definitely one of the rabbit holes. One of the other rabbit holes I went down not too long ago. I don't know if you're familiar. There was a tool that a ton of people use for vanity wallet creation called Profanity. And the underlying issue here that led to is probably about $180 million lost, at least, was the seed for their private key generation was pretty small. And immediately after this attack was played out, this is at the same time as I was developing some of the size like encryption algorithms. And I was also kind of enamored with this problem. And I spent probably about 1 or 2 weeks kind of reverse engineering how this was exploited and how you can reproduce it for yourself. And it involved, some cryptography, what little bit of, difficult programming like on GPU, C++, which I had never really extensively used. And I guess this is definitely my mindset, just solving random difficult problems that maybe nobody cares about, maybe nobody ever will, but things that I enjoy just for the fun of it.
See, I think this just goes back to like, this is how it happens though. Like most of the useful stuff came out of like some guy just tinkering and like coming up with some like cool solution that became a throwaway for the existing problem set, but like then somebody discovers it like 30 years later and it becomes some huge thing. Like there are all kinds of examples like this. Like Silly Putty, for example, was like a DoD funded
Really?
invention. Yeah, it was like a DoD funded thing. It was supposed to be like some kind of special adhesive or something like that. And it was like it was like created by some guy who just thought it was useless and they threw it away. And so some toy company picked it up. It was like, this is cool. Right? So you literally never
Yeah,
know.
you never know. You never know.
You literally never know, right? So I think that the fact that this space is so friendly to this kind of like just random tinkering and exploring and really trying to just push the limits, I think it's going to create in the long term a lot of really interesting contributions, not just to like Web3 crypto stuff, but it's going to create, I think, a lot of really interesting contributions to computer science as a whole. So
Yeah.
very bullish.
The one thing I haven't really started researching is ZK, the Stark's ecosystem. It's currently over my head on what my cryptography level is at, but the Web3 like ZK ecosystem is very on the bleeding edge, and I'm quite excited to see how it can impact outside of Web3.
For sure. I think there's going to be a lot that comes out of that in particular that will be very important, really. So I'm super bullish as well. I mean, it kind of sounds like if you had infinite time, you would probably spend time there too. But like, is there anything else?
Yeah,
Like,
I
if
would.
somebody gave you 6 months and said, "Hey, like you're gonna keep making the same amount of money you make now, but you don't have to go to work. Like, you can't work on size. You got to work on something else." What would you spend time learning? Like, what's on your wish list of things to focus on and learn?
Oh, this is difficult. Um, so this one thing, it's kind of too similar, maybe, but there's this idea of a. Have you ever used code.golf? So the underlying problem of this is to kind of solve a algorithm in the fewest amount of characters in whatever language you use. And I know 5 out of 9 has the gas.golf domain. Maybe a small call out there, but I think this would be a incredible tool for not only Solidity devs, but kind of a general Web3 ecosystem for creating kind of a collection or library of gas optimized snippets. We've seen this with Soulmate, Solady, tons of things, but kind of a interactive, not just on a GitHub, an interactive where anybody can submit a solution, and maybe if you spend enough time, you can make the fastest square root. And I think it could. It's not only a fun game, but it also helps the ecosystem at the same time. So I think that would be really fun to build out and have some fun with fellow developers.
I think that's a really good idea. I think you have a built-in business model too, which is I think you could find a way to you could basically charge companies to use something like this for like job interviews, right? For like hardcore Solidity devs. I feel like there's something there, right? Where
Like build a leaderboard out of it or something.
build a leaderboard, let like I don't know. You could probably either get advertising dollars or I don't know. You could probably even just like have a job board itself from companies or auditing firms that just need to hire elite Solidity talent, and would use this as a way to get in front of people. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
as someone who, as someone who's kind of sits on this side, like I lead a developer relations team, and I kind of know how much money is spent on developer attention, and
Absolutely.
it's not a small amount. So you that would actually probably work. So you should go
Yeah.
for it.
And um, the one platform I've been using, I think it launched about a month ago, is called Curda. They've been doing CTFs, like where it's kind of like a permissionless CTF. Anyone can, well, not anyone. You can deploy a contract with a challenge, and if you're the first solver, you can create another challenge. Um, they have a leaderboard. It's kind of a similar idea to this.
Interesting. Yeah, I think this entire space is an interesting place to look, because what I've noticed too is like the people in this industry who love like low level optimization stuff and like yourself, you guys love this. Like you like the Huff community, dude. The Huff guys
Yeah.
love this. Like they love Huff, right? And
Yeah.
it's such a cool like subculture to watch because it's like there's so much passion there. So just I mean, even if you had a relatively small number of people that would use this kind of thing, the amount of passion people have for it is it's huge. So, and it's also in the end, like I said, I think it's going to be very useful, right? Even if you're solving problems that feel like, all right, you know, this might be a little too fringe. This one thing that I found here, I don't see how this is going to be useful in production anywhere. You might say that now, but you truly do not know.
Yeah, it's just like we were talking about, scientists 1920s.
Totally.
Maybe the square root algorithm, maybe it's something cool.
Totally. And it's permissionless, right? You can just be an anon with the PFP from anywhere in the world and play in this game.
Yeah,
right?
and that's one thing that's really helped me. As I don't have like a long resume or anything. I'm just some random PFP on Twitter. Is that anyone can make it in Web3 as a developer. I kind of got started, out of nothing, terrible code, maybe some slight functionality. But it's a great ecosystem where anybody can have an impact and build a career from nothing. So that's one thing I really appreciate.
Yep, you're absolutely right. If there's anything I've learned by doing this podcast, it's definitely that is the case, man. People from all over the world, all different backgrounds. There's we had Dagachi on. I don't know, you know who Dagachi is?
Yeah, I follow him. I listen to that as well. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, think about his example, right? He was like a year and a half ago or a year ago. He was learning to code on public transportation on the way to like a retail job or something like that. And that guy is a machine. He is a machine, right? He is really, really good at what he does. He's extremely knowledgeable. And the speed at which some people in the space have learned, it's very impressive. So I'm with you there. But for devs that are just starting out in this journey, right? For like people that are in the phase you're in where, you're back in your days when you're maybe locking money in contracts because you're testing in prod. For people at that stage, do you have any like general advice for them, right? They're trying to carve out either like what their path is in the industry or, like what they should focus on, what they should learn. I mean, what would you tell somebody in that position?
Yeah. So the first thing that really helped me is finding a team, even if it's not people you work with necessarily, but finding a group of people that similarly will support you. You support them. It is invaluable because working solo in Web3 can be it can be not easy at times. There's hundreds of thousands of people in this, and you're just some anon on Twitter. So it really helps to have a group of people that will support you. And maybe from an engineering side, I'd say just trust what you've written. One thing I had a issue with was, I've written my code, I've written my tests, and I want to deploy this, but at the final moment, I just can't, press the button to, send the transaction. Um, what I did was deploy some, no one will ever use them, but just deploy something on on your chain of choice. Interact with it a few times. Maybe it's just some dumb NFT, you transfer to yourself and your friends. Just deploy something out there. And that really helped me with kind of my anxiety, deployment anxiety, I call it. So that helps me now. Like, I'm good to go. My code's good, my tests are good. Send it. That's what helped me.
Deployment anxiety. That's real though. It's real,
Absolutely.
right? This is real money. Like when you're building like your first, let's go back to our React app developer in the audience. If you're like building a little like project you just like deploy with Versal or something like that, there's really no risk, dude. It's like,
Yep.
yeah, they just click buttons and like nothing happens really. With that,
Yeah.
here they're clicking buttons and behind the scenes like, moving around. So I get that.
Yeah. It's not easy to be Web3 developer. There's real money on the line.
There's real risk, right? And you should actually think about that. When you're considering what you want to do in this space, like you don't have to be a smart contract developer to like contribute.
Of course.
To be honest with you, we probably need more like really good. Again, your React developers out there. If you're really good, you probably have a place here because there's
Yeah, we do. We do need. I mean, there's some great. There's some not so great React project front ends in Web3, and not all the risk is smart contract risk. That's definitely one thing. Like your bad front end code can do just as much damage.
absolutely, yeah. Name a button the wrong thing, and that's bad. That's
Mm-hmm.
bad as well. But how about okay? So that's maybe the first initial advice, right? So you're all right. So you find maybe a team, you work with people, you get over your deployment anxiety by just deploying a few things. Let's say you get like started with like some starter project and it does decently well, or you get your first job at a protocol you really like. From that point forward, what have you done to level up beyond that? I mean, it sounds like you've been kind of a learning machine, but like how have you approached your own like personal development?
Yeah. So in my personal development, I'd say the one thing that has helped me the most is becoming intimately familiar with some tooling. For me, it's Foundry, and for this has helped me. Like I can just spin up immediately within 10 seconds. A new Foundry project. I see something. Oh, I can reproduce that immediately. There's a new hack. Oh, how does this work? Oh, I can immediately reproduce it. It kind of reduces that friction of I need to, how do I initialize this new project? How do I write my code? Um, it's definitely helped me just do the things that if I wasn't intimately familiar, I would have pushed it aside. It's not worth the 30 minutes. When in reality, it's a great learning experience.
Yep, I think that's great advice. It shortens the time between like starting up a Foundry project or a hard hat project. You're not really going to do any innovation if you're not good at that, and it takes you 20 minutes to do it. Nothing you're doing there when you're setting up your project is going to like move the needle or make you unique in any way, right? The thing that
Yep.
makes you unique in some way is having some idea based on something you've seen, or like you said, wanting to reproduce something really quickly. Being able to take that and implement it right away, that is where something interesting might happen. If it takes you 30 minutes to set the project up, that's like the inspiration might have faded, or like
Exactly.
yeah, that's a really good way to look at it, I think. Interesting. I love it. Okay, so we're coming up on time a little bit here. But like a final question we ask everybody who comes on is, like we zoom out a bit, and like what I want to ask you is like, how do you hope Web3 as an industry evolves over the next like 5 or 10 years? But obviously, we talked about the importance of just like this open space of exploration. I think that's really good. But like, what do you hope things look like toward the end of like this decade?
It's a difficult one. I've only been in the industry for under 2 years, but the one thing I'd like to see more of as we go on is uh, more maybe more projects that are less Web3 limited. Like most things are kind of contrived to like financial or like moving money around or some sort of underlying blockchain technology. It not only for public adoption, but for bringing more developers. I think it would be great if we'd find more problems that can be solved in a Web3 experience, and kind of adopting that problem and solving it in a way that both crypto native and non-crypto native users can appreciate.
Yep, that's actually a more common answer to that question than you'd think. I think a lot of people are actually kind of tired of like the Web3 designation. I think it feels a little bit exhausting, right? It's like, this is just engineering, dude. Like, it's not like I want this to be just a separate little niche thing for forever. And I think I share your sentiment as well. So hopefully we get there.
Yeah, it would be a great future.
I'm with you. Well, listen, Rage, thank you so much for coming on. This time went by pretty fast, and I enjoyed the conversation.
Great talking to you.
Yeah, you as well. Is there anything else you want to let our listeners know, or anywhere else you'd like to point our listeners before we jump off today?
You can follow me on Twitter, but that's pretty much all I have to say.
What's the handle for people?
It's at @rage_pit.
All right, @rage_pit. You heard the man. Shoot him a follow.
Yeah,
and
get me over 1K.
Get him over 1K. Yeah, geez. Yeah, you deserve more than 1K at this point. All right. We'll see if we can help you with that. But again, Rage, thank you so much for coming on. It's been fun.
Thank you.